Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Paws and Purpose, the SPCA of Texas Podcast. I'm Paul Heiso.
KJ Eugene.
Oh, and I'm Mara Davies, and it's wonderful to be here with you all. And our special guest today is
Dr. Tynes. Dr. Tynes from our fabulous clinical care part of our facility here today. We are so honored to have you here today. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us. We're just beside ourselves, excited to talk to you. Like we were kind of talking off air before we started here. This is our third official podcast, so we're just so pleased to have you with us, and it's going to be fun. We're going to enjoy it. So glad you could join us.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah,
It's fun.
Yeah. So.
well. Do you want to start by tell us about your journey here? You've told me before, and it's amazing. And you have some incredible experience. And yeah, tell us about your journey.
All right. Well, I am a native Texan. I do like to brag about that when I'm here in the area. I grew up in Fort Worth, but I'm a veterinarian. Graduated from Texas A&M University, and did private practice with a special interest in behavior and exotic pets for almost 14 years before I was fortunate enough to get a residency to go back and study behavior in depth. So I did a residency at the University of California at Davis.
Nice.
And at the end of those 3 years, I became a board-certified veterinary behaviorist. Another way, I guess you can say that I'm a behavior specialist. I'm also a board certified in animal welfare, so I'm a welfare specialist. And I mostly have done private practice in my life, private practice behavior consulting, and with, again, still a special interest in exotic pets. And it was only about 3 years ago, actually 3 years ago this month, that I was fortunate enough to be able to come to work for the SPCA of Texas.
Awesome. So you've been here for 3 years.
3 years. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. What have you seen change in those 3 years from when you got here initially till now?
Well, I do feel like our numbers are a little bit better as far as, even though overall I know that supposedly adoptions are down and intake is up, I feel like we have reached a very nice balance here of dogs and cats available for adoption without being so overloaded that we're struggling to care for them.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. So I feel like that really the end game there is I see even better care for the animals than before. Not that it was ever bad, but I feel like it's really getting to be exceptional.
When you start here and keep going up, that's a great thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and last year, just because the numbers are fresh on my mind, we brought in just over 8,000 animals, and between adoptions and then transports to various parts of the country, we were right like a little scotch under 7,000. So that is a lot, and it's pretty fabulous.
That is.
Very, very different than 3 years ago.
Yes, very
Absolutely.
nice.
Yeah, well, and our behavior team is fabulous. We could not do what we do without you and the whole team.
Absolutely.
Well, we really do have a great team of people that are working in the behavior area, but we always say everyone's on the behavior team because how everyone interacts with animals is important because animals learn from every human interaction they have. But yes, I think it's a fantastic group of people. Everybody is so passionate, and I knew it would be that way, but it's nice to see it in action, people that are really so very committed to making life better for animals, because that's sort of my driving force as well.
For sure.
Before we dive into our first official question, I do have to ask you, I've never asked you this before. In your work with exotic animals, what was the most interesting exotic animal that you ever worked with?
That is such a fun question. You'll totally get us off course with
Sorry,
that.
I had to
okay. I get that question a lot, and it is always fun actually to kind of think, wow, there have been so many. It's been really interesting. But in private practice, it was probably the baby kangaroo that we treated.
How cool is that?
Yes, again, as a private practitioner, now, I'm not saying that kangaroos should ever be anybody's pet, but unfortunately,
how fun though.
This one was. And it was a baby that had not really probably been left with its mom long enough, so it was kind of struggling to eat and develop. But it was a fascinating little creature, and we, hospitalized it for a while. And actually, I carried it around in a pouch around my neck
Oh, my
for
goodness.
quite a while because that's where it was very comfortable in a little pouch because that's what they're used to.
Yeah.
And so
Oh,
it
wow.
was just very remarkable being that close to such a neat, unique animal.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for that little detour. It's kind of fun.
Exotic pets are always fun when things are going well.
Right.
And as appropriate as well.
Right.
Exactly. And that's the downside about exotic pets is how difficult it is for the average person to care for them. And again, even people that are incredibly committed, they love their animal, if they aren't given the right information, they will struggle to keep some of these animals healthy. And of course, there are some that just should not be pets in people's homes.
And Dr. Tynes, I think we see that a lot, at least to see on YouTube, like with the iguanas in Florida, people just turn them loose and there's a whole
Exactly.
overload of iguanas now. So, yeah, I think you're right. People need to be educated before they purchase or rescue any pet. You need to be educated on what you're getting into.
And then
Exactly.
what are the legalities too? Because there's a
Absolutely.
lot that's illegal.
Totally.
And as
Exactly.
it should be.
Yes.
Right.
You're right.
Yeah.
It's hard to take care of an animal that you have to hide or you feel you can't even take to the veterinarian,
Right.
Because you shouldn't have it. Well, that's not fair for that animal. It's not
Right.
going to be well taken care of that way.
Although I would like to put in a plug for how amazing it is to have a rat as a family member, domesticated. Veterinarians are around who will treat them, and they're just lovely.
You don't have to convince me. And even
loves
though
her ratties.
we
She loves her
do tend
ratties.
to refer to all of those little creatures as exotic pets,
okay.
I often was quick to remind people, well, actually, this rat is a domesticated animal.
Yeah.
The bunnies that we have as pets, those are domesticated animals. So yes, they can still be challenging to
Yes.
feed and care for, but at least they're a little bit more appropriate than,
Yes.
let's say, a lot of the birds
Sure.
that people
yes.
keep, or
Oh,
some
yeah.
of the reptiles that just
And
it's
the
just
rats
too
are,
hard to care
they're so
for them.
snuggly, the ratties.
They're pretty cute. I don't know.
I love rats.
Rats get a bad rap.
They really do.
Don't
Rats
they?
are fabulous
Yeah. They're smart, right? I mean, they're great.
and clean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dr. Tynes, I was wondering, can you recall a time when you just wondered, like the first time when you wondered why animals behaved the way they did? Like what was that moment that led you here?
Oh, wow.
question.
That's a lot of fun, too, because I realized, although when I was a kid, I didn't really know what to call it, but I knew from as far back as I can remember that I was fascinated with why animals did what they did. And it's hard to really remember one single moment, but I was in 6th or 7th grade, I think, when I was encouraged to enter a science fair for the first time. I don't even know if they still have science fairs. But my science teacher encouraged me to enter, and she even helped me set up a research project. And that research project was with brine shrimp, and it was checking to see which degree of salinity the brine shrimp preferred.
Oh.
So they were put in this little contraption, and they could basically, it was like a little Y-shaped thing. They could go
Interesting.
down different
Wow.
ways.
Choices.
They could make a choice in the salinity that they preferred. And again, even at the time, I didn't realize it, but several years later, I started that's really my interest was in why animals do the things they do. So it goes back really, really far.
I love that. It's always when someone's passionate about it, they're like, I don't know what this is called that I love, but I love it. So, yeah.
Well, and I think that's a good point, too, because I think a lot of people are under the impression that dogs are motivated by food and physical stimuli, period. And I think that's probably, you could go on about that forever, about that not being the case, right? Dogs are very complex.
Well, yeah, dogs are very complex. But again, one of the lovely things about them is we have bred them to be our companions. And but if you want to talk about the science of learning, and there is a science that we understand of learning, dogs learn just like people learn, just like earthworms learn. Really learning is something that happens amongst all living things. And one of the things involved in learning is understanding what reinforces a behavior and even what punishes a behavior. And one of the things I always like to tell my clients is that reinforcement and punishment is in the eye of the receiver.
Boy, that's
so
true.
it is,
Wow.
I love chocolate.
That's
And
deep.
if I say, here, Mara, thank you so much for helping me. Here's a box of chocolates, and you are allergic to chocolate, I have not reinforced you.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, one of the biggest challenges with any animal people work with is understanding, well, just because I think that this dog should enjoy me petting it and talking to it, then that means that's reinforcing. And it's not, because some dogs would rather not be petted in certain places.
Sure.
You have to find what reinforces them.
Yeah, well, that kind of leads into our first official question. I know we've been chit-chatting, but I want to get into this. What are some of the most common behavioral challenges that you encounter when treating rescued animals, and how do you address them?
I would say there are several things that we see very consistently, but probably one of the most challenging are the animals, and this can go for dogs or cats, that come in here that are very, very fearful and shut down. It's the way we describe them. These are animals that sometimes will sit in the back of a run with their head pressed into the corner, won't even look at us. So that kind of fear can stem from a lot of different things. It's not always because somebody abused them. In fact, it's more likely a combination of genetics and often poor socialization. So two really important things that people should think about when they're choosing animals. But these dogs, a lot of times they come in here and you get the feeling they have never been around another person. Maybe they've only been around the human being that they grew up with. And so all of these other people are very scary to them. And that's another time where I think people really need to think about, again, what is important to the animal. For some animals, they are not reinforced by the presence of humans, right? Because they are so afraid of humans. So you have to find a way to reinforce them. And it's all about really building trust, teaching these animals that they have nothing to fear from us, and then trying to just very slowly over time desensitize them to the things that they're afraid of.
And Dr. Tynes, I have about 1,000 questions in my head now based on what you just said, and I'm not going to hog this podcast and ask you questions over and over again. But I do have one that just came to my mind that to follow up on that. Do you find that there are differences? I always tell people there's two common things among all dogs. They all love treats and food and belly rubbings. It's almost like I know that's a blanket statement, but it's almost like every dog I meet, they're all cool with both of those things.
It's actually an excellent thing to bring up, because first, when talking about treats, what I always tell people is that there is no such thing as an animal that is not food motivated. We're all food motivated.
Absolutely.
Because if we weren't, we would starve and we would die.
Yes, ma'am.
So it is adaptive to be food motivated.
Yep. Makes sense.
What we want to understand again is that what motivates you in the way of a special meal and what motivates you or me or Mara in the way of a special meal is going to be different things.
Sure.
And we have to discover that with animals. But the other thing we have to understand is that dogs and cats, if they are very, very afraid, very shut down, they will not eat anything. So again, you have a clue here to help you understand whether your pet is comfortable in a situation or not. Because if my dog, who I know loves banana, believe it or not, banana is one of her favorite things.
Yes.
If I were in a situation, let's say I'd taken her somewhere she'd never been before, and I offered her a piece of banana and she refused it, I would know my dog is very upset. She's very distressed. She's afraid. She feels bad. Something is wrong, and I would get her out of that situation.
That's great insight, Dr. Tynes.
And instead, a lot of people think, that my animal's not food motivated because they won't eat sometimes. But I'm like, this is something you can use to recognize that your animal is uncomfortable and you need to remove it from that situation.
And is that breed specific, or does that run across?
It's across any animal, really.
Awesome.
If they're very, very terrified, basically, if that fear overwhelms something as basic and necessary as food, even their favorite food, that should tell you something. Their brain is not in a place to be learning something new. Let's say you're trying to teach them something new. That is not a teachable moment, as we say, that you need to get them out of there because they're not comfortable.
Gotcha.
So you would say then that it is true that you can determine medical conditions just based off the behavior of a dog?
It has been shown that behavior is probably one of our best first ways of recognizing that something is wrong with an animal. Again, from the science of animal welfare, we know that is the start. And in fact, in some cases, it's been determined that behavior is the best way to determine how well an animal is doing in a particular situation.
I saw that you said there was a movement about behavioral, veterinary behaviorists trying to become known as veterinary psychologists or something like that.
Well, they're, for example, because for many years there's been a bit of confusion about what the veterinary behaviorist is, some people will actually come out and say, well, is that like being a psychiatrist for a dog? And we have to say, well, yeah, it is. For a long time, we avoided that because you get the feeling people are like envisioning a dog on the couch. Like, well, no, these are nonverbal animals. So how we treat their mental health or emotional health or behavioral health, whatever you want to call it, is different from how we treat human health. But if you look at the array of people that help us with mental health, you go from counselors to therapists to psychologists, so PhD, people with study in psychology, all the way up to the medical doctor who is a specialist in psychiatry. So we have tended to not call it psychiatry, but there is starting to be a slow push for that from some of our members. And in fact, one of the newer books that I have written by a veterinary behaviorist from Europe, he called his book Introduction to Veterinary Psychiatry. And so there can be an argument for both. I don't like to confuse the public.
Good
Makes total
point.
sense.
Yeah. Well, and really quickly, to Paul's question a minute ago about belly rubs. I mean,
thank you.
Just to kind of, because that's actually really good when it goes along just to talking about, especially for the benefit of everyone listening, watching out there. Some people think, oh, I'm going to go hug my dog, or I'm going to go give my dog a belly rub. And is it kind of like what you were saying about food? Like dogs may have different preferences?
Absolutely. And what it leads to is a really great discussion about reading body language or visual cues in dogs. And the fact is, a lot of people think a dog is asking for a belly rub when it rolls over, but that's not always the case. You have to look at their entire body language and all the cues they're sharing with you. And I keep meaning to take video of my own dog because she is actually one of the first dogs I've seen in a very long time that very clearly demonstrates that she wants to have her belly rubbed. And it's from things like the fact that she'll roll over and lay there and you can pet her and you can stop and she'll just lay there and look at you and wag her tail.
Like, come on now.
No, come on. Yeah, keep it up.
Yeah.
There are often varying degrees of stiffness or, relaxation in their legs. So I do have pictures from a dog that belonged to my parents once of her rolling over when my dad came in with the nail trimmers to trim her nails.
Oh, interesting.
And so she rolls over, and again, her feet are very stiff like this against her body. Her tail is very tucked. And, of course, if you see her face, you can also see her whites of her eyes kind of showing. That is, in that context, what we call an appeasement gesture. So it's the dog truthfully saying to the equivalent of, please don't hurt me, I mean you no threat. And since, of course, most of us approaching a dog to pet, that's not, we can't even imagine why would the dog think we want to hurt it, right?
Sure.
Of course we don't want to hurt it. But it's a good reminder that, again, it's in the eye of the receiver, and what we think of as being very benign and shouldn't be scary can be terrifying for some dogs.
Sure.
So just, being more respectful and attentive to dogs, I think, can get people a long way. I mean, paying attention to them and what they're telling us.
Absolutely. Just to back up what Marcia said, I mean, especially if you don't know the animal. If it's not yours and you don't just
Right.
walk up and put your face in your friend's dog and hope that you're going to get a kiss because you might get bitten.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's worth noting that we've had many studies that show that most dog bites are preventable. Most dog bites are directed towards children who just do things that not all dogs are comfortable with. But some of it stems from that, and it's always been a concern of mine when I see kids, hugging on their dog and hanging on it and loving on it. I'm like, yes, that's great, that's beautiful, but does that child know not to go do that with every dog it meets?
That's
Right.
important.
Because
Absolutely.
I like to describe these things as, I call it the trust bank. And I try to explain, again, to clients that we all have a bank of trust and positive experiences built up with our pet, so that if, let's say, something happens and that animal is harmed, you step on its foot, let's say, that dog may not turn around and bite you because you have much more positive stuff in the bank that will overwhelm that negative.
I always wondered that.
Okay?
Yeah.
But if you have a dog you've never met, you don't have that trust bank built up with, when you take a deposit out of the bank, it can be much more damaging to the trust to the dog. And sometimes they will do things that are not appropriate. So it's that bank of trust that's super, super important, especially with children.
That makes sense. Really important just to add I did this with my kids because many years ago, before my son, my oldest, was born, we had a dog who had exhibited food aggression, and so we'd worked with a behaviorist to help him and make sure that he knew all the good things meant treats. And long story short, I taught my son from birth to give our dog his space, that we always had a door when there was food around. Our dog was on one side of the door, child's on the other. And then furthermore, I said I would tell him about the situation and did this with my daughter. Of course, working here kind of helped.
Right.
But I always taught my children, if you approach a dog and you don't know the dog, ask the person with the dog, may I pet your dog? Is it okay? And I think that's such an important thing for parents to teach kiddos.
Absolutely. I was always taught that first, and then if they say yes, you hold your hand out and let them smell you first before you touch them. I don't know if that's a good thing. I always do that too, is let them sniff me first.
That's actually, again, a very, very common response that people have to dogs, when I always remind them their sense of smell is really amazing. They probably smelled you when you walked in the room.
Right. So you don't have to be up with your grills for them to smell you.
And yes, one of the things a friend of mine, a behavior colleague, said one time to me that I thought, wow, yeah, that is a really great way to put it, is when kids came up to her when she was out with her dog and asked, can I pet your dog? She would say, I don't know, ask him. And not that her dog wasn't super friendly, but what was really cute one time when this happened is that the kid, something about him, I guess, seemed very pleasant to their dog, and her dog did walk over to him and, rub his head and stand there. And as he petted the dog was rubbing its head against him. And again, that's what I wish people would think about. Does the dog want to be petted?
That's a great way of putting it.
Very
And
much so.
it can, for people that are animal lovers, if you're in a group, and I'm often with other people with their pets, right? I sometimes think, wow, they must think I don't like dogs, because I'd never reach out and pet a dog I don't know. I always wait and see if that dog shows interest in being petted. Not just interest in me, because a lot of dogs will gladly come up and sniff you and, want to investigate you, but that doesn't mean they want to be petted. So again, it's reading that body language and being attentive to what the dog wants that will really keep you safe.
That's good stuff to remember.
My question for you really quick. So I read that there were 90 veterinarians, right? That's how I'm saying it, in the U.S. that earned the certifications that you have, basically. So
Yes.
how does it feel to be a rare commodity? No, I'm serious. My real question for real, though, is do you think more vets should specialize in behavior?
Oh,
And
yes.
congratulations on
And-
that accomplishment in your professional life.
It is a small group because it's a relatively new specialty. It's kind of suggesting that a minute ago, right? It hasn't been around a long time, and that's why people are still getting used to the idea. But because it was always a subject I loved so much, it was a no-brainer for me to try to get that residency and go back. What's still a little bit sad is that there is actually a huge interest in veterinary behavior in young veterinarians. Okay, lots of them want to become behaviorists, but there are not as many residencies in veterinary schools as we could use. So there is still this problem that a lot of people don't recognize the value of this field and the place that it needs to hold if we're going to help more people. And so a lot of people that want to become veterinary behaviorists, they've struggled to do it. It's something that we, I think, are struggling with in veterinary medicine, period, that, again, there's not enough support from the university level for behavior because, again, I think there are just a lot of people that don't realize the important role that behavior plays in overall health and welfare of animals. But we're getting there.
I mean, we talk about mental health all the time, and of course dogs need that.
Exactly. And I think that's going to help us. I think the increased awareness of mental health issues in humans are what's allowing us to get people to start thinking about mental health and welfare in animals, too.
Totally. Absolutely. Well, Dr. Tynes, like I said, I have 1,000 questions. One that we really wanted to get to was, how do you approach the process of rehabilitating animals that have experienced some sort of trauma or neglect in their life? What's the approach?
It really is just about building trust with an animal. So trying to get the animal into a comfortable environment with people that will interact with them in a very consistent and predictable way. When possible, we want that animal to be able to have some more choice and control in their life when you can give it to them, and that is very, very challenging in a shelter environment. It's challenging in a lot of environments. But for most of the time, it is really just about building a trust and showing them that, yes, people mean them no harm. But there are times when a little bit of medication can help with that, too. So I don't want to act like that doesn't happen because it's one of the tools in our toolbox.
Sure.
And it has been shown that we can give animals medication that can help decrease fears and anxiety.
That's great.
And so we need to do that when it's necessary, when just all the love in the world won't do it. And that we all want that. I hear clients say it all the time. I thought if we just loved her enough, we could get there. Like, it's not always possible. Sometimes it takes more than that love. It takes a lot of time and effort to rehabilitate some of these dogs.
I think I saw that you said it was multimodal, like you want to do a holistic type of thing.
Exactly. Again, environment's important. Who and how people are interacting with them is important. Medication, we often use pheromones. There are some natural supplements. So there's a lot of different things that we can use. And I do think it's lots of tools in my toolbox. The more I have, the better chance I'm going to have of helping that animal.
Excellent. Mara, do you want to take the last one? Do you want to?
Sure. Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of kind of building on that too, can you share a memorable success story where veterinary behavior care made a significant difference in an animal's recovery and then eventual adoption?
Ooh.
This is what makes me love my job so much. I have to admit that here at the shelter, at the SPCA of Texas, if you adopt an animal from us, you are entitled to a free behavior consult if you have any problems with your pet.
Awesome.
And I don't do a whole lot of this because I think not everybody recognizes yet that they can do that. But I have had a couple of cases over the last couple of years where people have come back with the dog that, let's say, is very afraid. Most of them are very fearful dogs. And we have worked together, tried different medications, given them suggestions for things to do. And the joy on those people's face and their voice when that dog makes a breakthrough. And it can be little, like for one of my clients that I'm thinking of now, it was because after think it's almost 2 years, she finally used the dog door on her own. She didn't have to have the door open for her. It was huge.
Yeah.
And having people like that tell me that that I've had some people say that if it wasn't for you, I would not still have this animal.
How does that make you feel?
That
Yeah.
I mean, I get goosebumps just thinking about
Yeah.
it. That's why I do what I do. Again, it's all about really helping people enjoy what I know is a precious gift, and that is that human companion animal bond. I know how much I love my animal and how much happiness she brings me, and I love seeing that happen with other people and their pets.
Well,
That is pretty wonderful.
we are so lucky to have you on staff here, and we're so thankful to have you in today to just give us a little bit of insight into what you do and kind of break it down for us and just kind of bring awareness, I think, to everyone who watches and listens that, there are more to dogs than just food and pets.
Right.
I mean, they're sentient beings with complexities just like any other living thing.
Exactly.
So it's so nice to hear you reinforce that,
Thank you.
And we're honored to have you here.
It's my pleasure.
Honored.
It's
Honored.
fun to chat.
Well, thanks so much, Mara. Thanks again for being with us. KJ, thanks for doing all you do.
Thank you, Paul.
Again, you're welcome, and we're so excited that everybody joined us for the podcast. We'd love to have you back on sometime. Hopefully, you'll be up for that.
Happy to do it.
I have way more questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tynes.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got
Yeah,
so
that'd
many.
be
Wish we
great.
could have you
Thank
for a
you.
full hour and a half
Oh,
because we could probably
seriously.
just pelt you.
Oh, or just go on and on about, hey, tell us about what are all those cues? There's all of those
Yes.
cues we could talk about.
Right.
All of our training
So
that we
many
go through
things.
here as staff and volunteers, that's a whole other just really critical topic.
Absolutely. So you got to come
Sure
back,
is.
okay?
Yeah, okay.
Please do.
No problem.
Well, everybody, thanks for
Thanks.
joining us again for the Paws and Purpose, the SPCA of Texas podcast. We've got one this month. Hopefully, we'll have another one next month. Come back and join us. We'll see you very soon. Thanks for joining us.